Thank you, Sid. Wow. If you haven't been in there yet, which most of you haven't, you're going to love it. Congratulations, Dr. Keenum. This is a crown jewel, something that everyone's going to be proud of. But every time over the time I've been in Congress, every time I've talked to Dr. Marzalek, he is intense and so excited about Ulysses S. Grant and the vision that and it takes that, and we've seen it. And Dean Coleman, thank you for all your hard work and things that you do here. So it's a great day, and congratulations to all involved. In just a few minutes, I'll have the opportunity to introduce two special guests, and the only reason I got invited was because they said, hey, if you can get the Archivist of National Archives and the Librarian of the Library of Congress to come, we'll let you say a few words. So I'm excited to have both of them here. But you know, in Mississippi, our life has just seemed to always revolve around the Civil War and that history. And as a child growing up and with a brother, we toured all these Civil War battlefields and monuments, and it was just part of us. And we were so, interested in it. We asked our dad when we were little, said, Dad, do we have any ancestors that fought for the South during the Civil War? And he said, no, son, we didn't. There were two groups that were exempt from service in the Civil War. One were the blacksmiths, because they were so important to the war effort, and the other were horse thieves, and we didn't have any blacksmiths in the family. So, as many of you know, Mississippi State University is one of only 6 universities housing a presidential library. And there's no other library like the one that we're celebrating today. This structure is now a one-of-a-kind collection, including the Frank J. and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana, considered the largest privately owned Abraham Lincoln collection in America, as well as Mississippi State University's Congressional and Political Research Center, which houses 9 congressional collections, including those of many very well-known MSU alumni, Senator John C. Stennis, Congressman Sonny Montgomery, Congressman David Bowen, our late and precious friend Alan Nunnally. And if it's okay with Dean Coleman, I'd like to be the 10th. So I hereby, after years of that, so thank you. She has worn me out since I started. I want you to know, I give up. So we're excited about that. Back in the summer of 1864, General Grant launched a massive, grueling campaign that went on for months. He had promised President Lincoln he would fight on the line if it took all summer. In a telegram to Grant, President Lincoln wrote the following, and you'll see it in just a moment. President Lincoln said to General Grant, and I quote, I have received your dispatch expressing your unwillingness to break your hold where you are. Neither am I willing. Hold on with a bulldog's grip and chew and choke as much as possible. After that campaign, very fittingly, political cartoonists would illustrate General Grant as a massive bulldog. How fitting that he would now be here. It's my honor to introduce a person who's no stranger to Mississippi State University. He's been here before and a great friend. He's the 10th Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero. Since his confirmation in November of 2009, David has transformed the National Archives and Records Administration towards a goal of transparency, participation, and collaboration. Appointed by the 44th and 45th President of the United States, David Ferriero is responsible for safeguarding and making available so many of our nation's treasures and valuable records. Just to name a few, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all there in the archive, in the rotunda of National Archives in Washington, D.C. He has been a pioneer when it comes to digital technologies for the library systems during his impressive career. Most importantly, he's a great friend. of this university. Please join me in welcoming the 10th Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that wonderful introduction. I am honored to be back in Starkville to celebrate the dedication of this wonderful library, and especially to celebrate the Williams collection, a wonderful gift to the university. President Grant and the National Archives have a long and rewarding history, beginning in 1964 with the late John Simon, and since 2008, John Marzalak here at Mississippi State. Our National Historical Publications and Record Commission has funded the 32-volume papers of Ulysses S. Grant Project, a supplementary volume, and the 2-volume personal memoirs published this year by Harvard University Press. Support which enabled the launch of the digital edition of the papers of Ulysses S. Grant, a total of more than $2 million in federal funding. So when people ask you what your tax dollars are going for, that's what they're going for. As Archivist of the United States, I oversee 14 presidential libraries, from Herbert Hoover in West Branch, Iowa, to Barack Obama on the south side of Chicago. And we're in frequent contact with the hundreds of sites across the country, documenting the lives and administrations of other presidents. On behalf of all of us, I'm delighted to welcome Ulysses S. Grant to the group of presidential libraries. Presidential libraries are a uniquely American phenomenon, and President Roosevelt articulated the vision in dedicating his own library in Hyde Park in 1941. He said, "It seems to me that the dedication of a library is in itself an act of faith. To bring together the records of the past and house them in buildings where they will be preserved for the use of men and women in the future, a nation must believe in three things. It must believe in the past, it must believe in the future, and it must, above all, believe in the capacity of its own people so to learn from the past that they can gain in judgment in creating their own future." For the use of men and women in the future, for me, that's the most important part of our work, enabling, encouraging, and inspiring the use of our records to retell the stories and to keep our history fresh. Historian Eric Foner, in his important book, Who Owns History?, has been my guide in this phase of our work. He writes, "History always has been and will be regularly rewritten in response to new questions, new information, new methodologies, and new political, social, and cultural imperatives. But that each generation can and must rewrite history does not mean that history is simply a series of myths and inventions. There are commonly accepted professional standards that enable us to distinguish good history from falsehoods like the denial of the Holocaust. Historical truth does exist, not in the scientific sense, but as a reasonable approximation of the past. But the most of those outside the ranks of professional historians to accept is that there often exists more than one legitimate way of recounting past events. So who owns history? Everyone and no one, which is why the study of the past is a constantly evolving, never-ending journey of discovery. And those who toil in these vineyards, in this case, the staff here in the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library, are the privileged guides to these journeys of discovery. Working with faculty and students and other researchers, they get to share their expertise and to learn of the richness of the collection along with their clients. And this library has already guided many of those journeys. I'm a huge fan of the acknowledgement pages of new books, and I was pleased but not surprised to see Ron Chernow's kudos to John, the staff, and the collection here. He said, "A scholarly feast for anyone remotely curious about Grant. I especially profited from the numerous oral histories, profiles, newspaper interviews, letters, and diaries that conjure up Grant's life with extraordinary vividness. The first-rate team of archivists and assistants at the library provided help with unfailing courtesy and efficiency. Recognitions of our contributions to the rewriting of history are the rewards of our careers and what puts the smiles of pride on our faces every day. And lots of people should take credit for what we are celebrating today, here today. It was a real team effort. And as your quarterback, Nick Fitzgerald, tweeted last Sunday night, a program is bigger than one person. We pride ourselves on our ability to always give relentless effort. And the results of that relentless effort are so evident as I wandered around this wonderful space today. That said, in concluding, I do want to single out one person. Having spent much of my life in academia and university research libraries, I know that libraries, as important as they are not always at the top of the administration's priority list. And for such a successful project like this one, if you don't have a president on board, forget it. So thank you, Mark, for your support of this project. And if I had thought to bring my cowbell with me, I would have given you a couple of public clangs. Thank you for the opportunity of joining you today.
The Library of Congress has been around since the early 1800s. I'm going to have the privilege now of introducing you to only the 14th librarian of the Library of Congress in all of that time. She is a great friend of so many people. She was the rock star at the Mississippi Book Festival in August, those of you that were there. Well, we had one event where she was there with a reception for all the librarians and all the high schools and places in the state, and you would have thought Elvis Presley had walked into the room the way she was treated. We got to do a 1-hour live interview on C-SPAN that morning at the book festival. She really is a treasure for our country. Keep in mind this as we hear. The 14th in the long history of the Library of Congress as the librarian, the first woman, the first African American. She has set a standard and set a bar so high, and what an honor to have her here today. Please help me welcome Dr. Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Harper. And I have to tell you, I always say Chairman Harper because he is the chairman of our Oversight Committee, and we are very pleased because he has a true dedication to history and making sure that it's accessible to all. And thank you, President Keatum. You made a librarian's heart sing when you said that when you face difficulties with budgets and so many other things, that you knew that you had to keep the library at this wonderful institution whole so it could be this heart and soul of it. So thank you for that. And my appreciation to Governor Bryant for the warm Southern welcome that he gave me at the book festival. I was ready to move. And this is my second trip, and it's always wonderful to be here. It's my second in 3 months. And when I think about the partnership that this represents, I have to also let you know that I'm partnering with the Archivist of the United States, Mr. David Ferriero, for being a collaborator in Washington. However, when it was mentioned that certain documents reside at the archives, I just gave a nudge and said, but in 1952, those were taken by tanks from the Library of Congress to the archives. And maybe one day we'll get them back. I really appreciate, though, being here at this momentous day at the university. And it represents so many things that are indicative of what history can bring. Ulysses Grant said, "I appreciate the fact, and I'm proud of it, that the attentions I'm receiving are intended more for our country than for me personally." And I think that that quote is the essence of what we are celebrating today. And then to have Judge Williams, the collection of Abraham Lincoln. As a native of Illinois, I can tell you that what you have collected and what you are bringing here to be part of the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Collection is a true marriage and a true gift to all of us. Now, since being sworn in as the 14th Librarian of Congress, I've had many of what I've been calling pinch me moments at the library. The collections of 23 presidents from George Washington to Calvin Coolidge, the world's largest baseball collection, the world's largest comic book collection. It's just a festival of history every day. But I have to tell you that, and those of you who are getting ready to go through those doors in a few minutes will have pinch me moments when you have an opportunity to see the treasures that are on display with technology that brings it together in a way that you can't imagine. So thank you for doing that for all of us. Now, I'm also here to give you a pledge, and I know that my partner here from the archives is part of this pledge, and we planned it a little bit, that you will have the full resources and services of the Library of Congress to supplement, to be a partner with you as you program and as you try to expand your resources here. And we want to just say that publicly here today. Now, both Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant hoped to reunite the nation during and after the Civil War. And as we've seen recently in the news, the legacy of the Civil War continues to engage Americans in a national dialogue about the participants in the war and how we remember and interpret them. The knowledge housed in this library, in this university, could only add to that conversation as we continue to wrestle with our past. But Ulysses S. Grant and Abraham Lincoln have been embraced in Mississippi in 2017 is a fitting legacy to the men who appealed to the better angels of our nature in the quest to let us have peace. So thank you again for having me, and thank you for having this.